Welcome to the Black Etc. podcast, a podcast about how ideas and culture spread among Black Americans, especially outside mass media. I'm your host, Ian Youssef. My guest today is accomplished jazz bassist, professor, and public music educator, Paul Thompson. He's adjunct professor of jazz bass at Duquesne University and West Virginia University. He has many popular social media accounts where he teaches bass or teaches music through bass. He's a mainstay in the Pittsburgh jazz community, and he's worked with many luminaries, including the late Stanley Turrentine and Maynard Ferguson. Our discussion today centers mostly around music education and learning. We talk about Mr. Thompson's decision to turn his social media accounts into a vehicle for teaching about bass. We talked about his controversial post that went viral where he lamented the breakdown of the jazz apprenticeship model of jazz elders teaching young up-and-coming jazz musicians in person, and how younger people kind of look askance at that model and think it's a form of gatekeeping. We spoke about regional differences in jazz styles and whether those unique regional styles are becoming more rare because of the connection we all have today. And we talked about the influence that jazz bass has had on other genres and the influence that those other genres have had on jazz bass. Mr. Thompson talked about the history, legacy, and vibrancy of the Black Pittsburgh community. And we even spoke a little bit about the bass style of hip-hop producer J Dilla. I've always been drawn to the sound of bass. I think I hear bass first in music. In college, my dad, who was a musician, brought me an electric bass one year. I noodled a bit, but by that point, I don't think I had the capacity or the patience to become good at it. So being actually a bass player or a musician was never in the cards for me, but I think I still have the ear for it, which has led me to looking for people, bass players especially, who explain bass and explain music. I talk about a few of them in a discussion here with Mr. Thompson. We talked about Thundercat, Victor Wooten, Bootsy Collins, and others. And my contention is that for some reason, bass lends itself to teaching. And I don't know why that is. There are other musicians and instruments where I'm drawn to their teaching styles. One example is the interview Dick Cavett did in 1979 with Oscar Peterson, where Peterson is describing all the different styles of the different types of piano players. It's an amazing piece of pedagogy, of public teaching by showing. Jean-Baptiste has some of that as well. But yeah, the bass educators are really the ones that speak to me directly, which is why I reached out to Paul Thompson. Mr. Thompson was so gracious. I really thank him for a wonderful conversation. Please enjoy. Today I'm here with bass player, music educator, social media video essayist, Paul Thompson. He's adjunct professor of jazz bass at Duquesne University and West Virginia University. He's a Pittsburgh jazz mainstay. He has worked with Stanley Turrentine and Maynard Ferguson. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. I have come across a lot of notable bass players, yourself included, who are educators as well, who seem to have made it their mission to teach bass in public or teach music via bass. So I'm thinking Christian McBride, Thundercat, Victor Wooten even explaining feel, Bootsy explaining the one. It's possible that bass lends itself to music teaching. What do you think about that?
Oh, I totally agree. I would say, in my humble opinion, that the bass is probably the most important instrument in any kind of group that you're going to hear. It's the connective tissue between the rhythm and the harmony. As a bass player, you have to know what's going on at all times. We have to listen harder than anybody else. We have to let everybody know where we are in the song. We have to push things when they need to be pushed and pull them when they need to be pulled. And the bass player is kind of the unofficial leader of the band. So the scope that you have to cover as a musician playing bass is huge. I think a lot of bass players deal with music with a capital M, and that lends itself to really listening hard and passing things on. I work with a lot of young people because my job is to listen harder than anybody else. So I think specifically for me, the way that our hands are in every pot really, really opens itself up to having a really broad view of music.
Yeah. So I followed your YouTube channel for a long time. You started off just playing different pieces, but then there was a hard shift. Why did you decide to turn your social media accounts into a vehicle for teaching about bass playing?
Well, that was the plan. I had a YouTube channel like everybody else did in, I don't know, 2008, 2009, and I had a couple of videos of my cats up there, a couple of things of my students performing and my wife. I used it like everybody else did. And then I would say about 12 years ago, people started to do educational kind of things on YouTube. And I was very influenced by a couple of creators in particular. Rick Beato's videos I really loved.
Yeah.
And Adam Neely's videos I thought were very thoughtful and very well done.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking I'd like to do that because I think I felt like I had a story. I had an angle that I wanted to share with everybody. And I bought a camera in 2019, the year before COVID. And I started doing tests. And then COVID happened. And that was kind of a sign for me from above that I needed to start doing it. So I didn't know how to immediately get into the educational thing. So I just put the camera up and I started just playing bass solos because we didn't know when we were going to be playing gigs again with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I played every day. I would play a bass solo, no editing, and just post it. And I said I was going to do that until I had a gig again. And I ended up doing it 63 days in a row before the next gig.
Wow.
But I'll tell you what, at the end of the 63 days, I was completely comfortable with recording myself and just posting it without any kind of judgment and just uploading on a regular basis. And so when I had that first gig back, I did a vlog about it. That was really my first kind of official video, was kind of documenting the first gig and talking about what it was like to play again after everybody had been home for a few months.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of evolved into the educational thing. And I did a lot of really tutorial specific things trying to find what my thing was going to be. It took me about a year, maybe a little more than a year, to really find the thing that was going to be mine. Like my kind of storytelling, my kind of analysis, my kind of scripting and editing. It took me a while to really find my groove in that way.
Yeah. And as you've been doing this channel, have you been able to draw any insights about craft or about the music history?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The amount of research that I go through to prep for something has been immense. I probably double or tripled the knowledge I already had on people that I really love to listen to and knew a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of research is tremendous that I go through, and I try to vet where I get my information. I don't just go to Wikipedia and start pulling things from there. I prefer to hear something from people's mouths themselves if they say it, like a podcast or an interview or something like that. But my knowledge has totally increased on all this stuff. And the craft and playing, I can't tell you how much I've learned about myself, recording myself and trying to replicate these bass lines on a regular basis. You hear what your weaknesses are. You really have to work on playing with a drum machine and a click, getting a clean sound, everything. I'm absolutely a better bass player now than I was 5 years ago.
Yeah. We were talking earlier and you said that you thought that there were actually regional differences in jazz styles. Can you say more about that and give me a couple examples?
Okay. Yes. Every region had a different kind of a sound, a different kind of a musician. And I'll give you one example right off the bat. People in New York who play music, let's say jazz. Jazz in New York sounds vastly different than jazz on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude on the West Coast is it's sunny. Let's go for a drive. Let's go to the beach. It's cool. Let's relax. And the music reflects that. In New York, it's very cold. I have to get on the subway. I hope I can pay my rent this month. It's dirty. My friend got mugged last night.
Right.
But there's a different kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
There's an insistence.
Yeah.
And so regionally, all these parts of the country, It's like a big stew where everything comes out different.
Mm.
Philadelphia has a very regional, very New York. It's not that far from New York, but it's a very urban, very hard swinging blues sound. And Pittsburgh is kind of closer to the Philadelphia sound is than the Cleveland sound. Ohio musicians have a whole different thing. Some people think Ohio is the home of funk music.
Right.
The funk that comes out of Ohio is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. And then when you move west, Chicago is definitely a more blues influenced city, a more blues influenced sound. A jazz musician like Ramsey Lewis would have never come out of Philadelphia the way that he plays. That's a Chicago kind of a thing. And you move south, the musicians from Memphis have a totally different thing. So it's very much like, if I could describe it at all in a way that people might be able to really recognize, it would be like food. You know, you don't go to New York to get gumbo.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't go to New Orleans for a slice of pizza.
Right.
It's very much like that. And all these different regions. And another thing about it is different regions have different tunes. You know, there's a whole set of language and standards that we play in Pittsburgh. We play a lot of Pittsburgh jazz iconic music, like Stanley Turrentine and George Benson and Earl Garner. Those kind of tunes are called all the time. My friends, I play with a lot of people in Ohio frequently, people from Youngstown and Akron and Cleveland. And when I play with them, they have a whole different set of tunes that they play. We play a tune by Stanley Turrentine. It's like the national anthem in Pittsburgh. It's called Sugar. It was a big hit song for him. My friends in Cleveland, I told a friend of mine, yeah, we were playing Sugar. He said, man, I haven't played that song in 30 years. And I said, man, that's the national anthem in Pittsburgh.
Right.
That's another thing. Just the kind of the language we speak is a little bit different going from city to city, but that's part of the magic of the music, in my opinion, is that these different regions, and you hear the same thing as in hip hop too.
Yeah.
That Southern hip hop, the West Coast, the East Coast. I love it. I love how different it is.
That's right. So I noticed you used the past tense. You said had stylistic differences. Have sounds become more kind of flattened and homogenized in the modern era?
Absolutely. Our ability to communicate with each other and to do it so fast, I think, has totally kind of narrowed the wide band that we used to get.
Yeah.
People are connected immediately. People in China now can sound like someone from New York. People in Brazil, people in Atlanta are playing like people from Brazil and from Argentina. And it's just so available and so quick that it's hard for a style to kind of gestate where it's at.
Yeah.
It's still kind of there. So I have hope that it can survive and we'll still get those different flavors, but it's not as broad as it used to be.
Yeah. You mentioned in there, you're from Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I didn't really know much about Pittsburgh and Black Pittsburgh. My mother-in-law lived there for a while, so we would visit. And all I knew about Pittsburgh was, August Wilson, Stanley Turrentine, Billy Strayhorn, and then the Pittsburgh Pirates, the all-black team that they fielded. So I didn't really know much.
What can you tell me about Black Pittsburgh? What is Black Pittsburgh like? How would you describe it?
Wow, what a great question. Well, I've grown up in the city, and there are predominantly Black neighborhoods. There's a few. There was one called East Liberty, which is where I lived most of my life. My family is from the Hill District, which is the legendary cultural part of town, kind of close to downtown where all the Black performers had to come through and perform. There's another place close to the east part is Homewood, another wonderful Black neighborhood. We have such an incredible, strong, and individual Black community here. It has so much character and so much history. People like Ahmad Jamal, another great jazz musician, one of the first, if not the first woman to be a tenured piano player with a major symphony, is from Pittsburgh. She played with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. The first Black NBA player ever drafted went to Duquesne, the college that I teach at. There is a rich history and culture of Black people in this place that really cultivated after the Great Migration. The cool thing about the people who are my age, from my generation, Gen X, all of our grandparents are from different places. My grandfather was from South Carolina, and he came up here with his family. I have a friend who's a great drummer here. His parents came up when his father was trying to get a doctorate. He came up from, I believe it was Louisiana. There's a lot of us whose parents and grandparents came up during the Great Migration. So there's this great mix of all these Black regions around the country. And it's a big melting pot of all these wonderful, beautiful Black parts of the USA in one place. And just like any other place, we speak a language. You know, when you meet somebody from Pittsburgh and they know you're from Pittsburgh, they want to know if you're Black from Pittsburgh. Oh, where you from? Oh, I'm from East Liberty. Oh, man, I'm Homewood. You know, oh, man, I'm North Side.
Yeah.
You know, there's a brotherhood there, too, that you got to really appreciate. But I mean, the last thing I'll say is just the culture is thick here. And I'm entrenched in the jazz culture of Black Pittsburgh, which is one of our great, great, great legacies.
Yeah. Okay, I know this is a big question, but
Okay.
So in what ways has jazz bass influenced different genres? If you can give me a couple examples of that, and then some examples of how those later genres or other genres have influenced jazz bass.
Sure. Well, I will say that all American music, probably the best part of American music is that it's all a mutt. Everything influences everything else. A combines with B, produces C.
Mm-hmm.
And jazz is definitely one of the children of the blues. It came out of the blues. So there's that very strong blues influence. And jazz is a music that can grab onto something else. And then it evolves into something else, which is really, really wonderful. But so getting back to your question, jazz bass was one of the first rhythmic powerhouses in music.
Mm-hmm.
Even coming out of the blues, the bass wasn't necessarily that important of an instrument to give you rhythm and drive. And then about 100 years ago, there was a guy who played with Duke Ellington named Wellman Breaux, who was the first bass player to ever walk a bass line. And when I say walk a bass line, I mean, instead of playing in two, boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick, he played quarter notes. He played boom, 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 which was a total innovation that we're all benefiting from 100 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But that created the rhythmic drive for the bass to be as important as the drums.
Mm-hmm.
It created this kind of, wow, the bass needs to be active. The bass needs to be rhythmic. We need to lean into the bass, follow the bass like we're following the drummer. And that in turn kind of influenced every music after it. Rock and roll, early pop music, this drive in the bass, this rhythmic pulse that comes out of the bass, not this bowing big low notes like in classical music, but like percussive, like a drummer. Jazz bass lines influenced everything after it. Now, conversely, when the music started becoming more popular and pop music influences started coming into it, jazz bass players started playing electric bass.
Mm-hmm.
And this was Miles Davis primarily. Miles was one of the people in the 60s that said, I want to sound like this music that everybody else is into.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was into the rock. Everybody was into the more popular forms of music. Miles was one of the first people that brought the electric bass into his music and incorporated it. So all the grooves, all the sounds, he facilitated it so that slapping, so that these contemporary techniques could have a home in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
He really blended all this stuff. He made it cool to do that. He made it acceptable for the music to take in the contemporary influences. So as a bass player, it really started for me with that walking bass line that informed everything. And then we kind of took all those influences from the electric bass in the 60s, and that became a part of jazz. And it's one hand washing the other. And that's the cycle of everything, is that the jazz puts something out and it influences the popular canon. And then the popular canon does something and it influences jazz. That will be the cycle forever.
Yeah. I've seen in your videos, you're also a hip hop fan.
Mm-hmm.
Tribe, Pete Rock, and those are some of my favorite bass producers in hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
But my contemporary favorite is probably JD, who's known as Dilla.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk in recent years about his influence on jazz drumming with like Dilla time, shifting the time and not quantizing his beats.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the thing that first and always drew me to him was the bass. And I don't really hear people talking about that. But to me, it's the bass. Do you have a relationship with his music? And what is your take on his bass style?
Yeah, I absolutely have a relationship with his music, and some of it is really good and some of it is really bad. And I'll explain. I'll tell you a quick story. I fell in love with that record, Donuts.
Yeah.
I love that record. And when I was really heavily listening to that record, we had a cat who, it was a total tragedy. He got totally sick, like his kidneys failed. He was kind of a young cat. So the whole time I was listening to Donuts, this cat was going through this sickness, and we had to put him asleep. And I was like listening to Donuts so heavily that it's hard for me to listen to Donuts now without thinking of that little guy. Because music, it's just like, it's tied to that experience for me.
Yeah.
But that being said, I love it. I think the bass in his music, and you bring up a really great point and totally valid. I think the bass in his music, I think the lower end of his music is what the focus is on. I think it's broad. I think his bass lines are very broad, and what's being featured and what's dancing to me is the bass drum. If you think about like that Far Side groove, Running, it's a great template for what his style was, which was the hi-hat and the snare are keeping time. And then the bass drum is bouncing all over the place. The bass drum, which is unusual, like for a funk groove, sometimes you let the hi-hat, the drummer will let their hands do all the dancing. But it's that bass drum in conjunction with that kind of simple bass that makes the low end just jump off of his records. So I love his stuff, but I hear it as, to me, the bass lines are in service to that bass drum. The bass drum is really the star of those beats.
Yeah.
And he orchestrates that stuff so well.
Yeah. So probably the first song I heard from him was Busta Rhymes' Still Shining. And the drum is also weird on that. It's unpredictable and that doesn't repeat on the bars, right? Maybe I'm hearing ghost notes or something, but I heard the bass in there. The thing that opened it up for me years later was Mono Neon did a solo over that.
Yeah.
And it was very crazy because these notes that he was playing are not necessarily in the beat, but that's what I heard in my head, for years.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's another one that's, even though he doesn't speak, I think I've learned a lot just bass wise.
He's a freak. He's an alien from another planet.
Yeah. You went viral a while ago for decrying the gradual breakdown of the jazz apprenticeship model. I want you to speak a little bit about what the post said and why you thought it struck a nerve.
Sure. So I played a gig one day. It was one younger guy and another older guy. So I'm 52, and it was another musician who was also like middle age. I think he was probably 48 or 49. We played this jam session, and these younger musicians came out for the jam session, and they didn't really come to hear us, which is something that's kind of an etiquette thing in jazz. If you show up late to a jam session just so you can play, you kind of pay your respects to the people playing. You come out, you hear what they're doing.
Right.
Then you sit in for the jam session. So they kind of showed up right before it was time to play, and then they played, and then they kind of cut out, which, to me was just, that's not cool.
Yeah.
And so I had a talk with my friend, and we got into this really serious conversation, and I had a lot of thoughts when I got home. So I typed up this kind of thing, this statement, and I put it on Facebook, and it started getting a lot of response. And my friend called me and he was like, man, you need to put that on Instagram because young people are on Instagram. So then I turned it into an Instagram post, and that started getting traction, and people started like really, either vehemently agreeing with me or totally disagreeing. So what it said in the post was that I grew up in a time where you had to go through older musicians to play jazz. There was no way to get to the music unless you went through them. They had the keys to the castle. And if you wanted access, you had to play with them. You had to interact with them. You had to listen to what they had to say to you, because often they had more experience than you. You had to be respectful. And then they would kind of let you in. And I know it's a kind of a form of gatekeeping, but we were constantly challenged. And when you finally got in and you were playing with them and they gave you credit, it was an amazing thing. It was an amazing thing when you stood on stage with these people, these heroes, and they finally raised you up, and you had to work to that point. And it was harder to do that. And so I kind of aired my grievances in this post just about how the music is an apprenticeship. And I think anything in life, as a teacher, everything is better one-on-one. Everything is better person to person. It's always best if you're learning from someone. Someone can tell you things. You can ask them questions. You can do it in real time. A YouTube video will never, ever be a substitute for being able to stand on stage with a bunch of other people and then have them give you feedback in real time. Nothing will ever replace that. So it was about my experience going through that. And just some of the comments were great. It seemed like they were very ageist. Older people are like, you were right. I really appreciate what you said. Basically about how sometimes people are hard on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about enduring it because you love playing music. And if you want to be better. And there were several people who totally disagreed with me. And basically some of the comments were like, you were abused. You don't know this, but you endured abuse.
Right.
And it was like, I was what? Abused? No, there were people I played this music with that cared about the music so much and about me that they weren't going to let me do it poorly.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to let me do it in a way that they didn't think I should be doing it. So I appreciated that I had those adults there to say, oh, no, young man, do this. And I had to earn my spot. I had to earn my spot up on stage. I had to endure it. And I also had to prove that I loved music enough that if somebody on stage told me, you're playing wrong, that it wasn't going to make me quit playing music forever.
Yeah.
That I was going to go back and fix it and get to it. So the whole thing was about, basically passing on the tradition, respecting your elders. Because you're standing on their shoulders. They've been doing this longer than you. Listen to their stories. I learned more. I said this in the post. There's a legendary drummer that lives here in Pittsburgh. His name is Roger Humphreys. He played on these great Horace Silver records in the 60s. He played with Ray Charles. He's one of the best drummers on the planet. He still is, and he's in his mid-80s right now. But I grew up playing with him, and some of the best lessons I ever learned from him weren't even on the bandstand playing. It was when I was carrying his drums to his car. The things he had to tell us while we were carrying his drums to his car were invaluable and priceless. That's the music. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, especially young people. They think the music is this YouTube video that's going to show me the scale that I can play over this chord or this pattern. No, the music is interacting with these people. It's hearing their stories. It's being around them, hearing how they talk, seeing what they drink. I'm not even saying you have to drink, seeing what they drink though,
Right.
seeing how they carry themselves. That's where I learned the music, was being around those people. And when we got off the bandstand, Stanley Turrentine, Maynard Ferguson, we didn't talk about music. We never talked about music. And I played with those guys 25 years ago. My memories have nothing to do with musical things. My memories have to do with traveling with them and having dinner with them and funny things that happened on gigs. That's what I remember. It's never music. It's the other stuff that young people don't seem to get. So that's the short version of everything that happened with that post. So I made a video where I kind of read the statement and I kind of elaborated on it a little bit. And people, again, they chimed in. Some people very much agreed with me. And some people very, very much disagreed with me. But that's discourse.
That's the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to be clear, right? It's not just shaking your fingers at young people and saying you're bad or whatever. It's not really their fault because culture is driving and shaping the way that they interact with people. So forget about COVID for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
The culture is driving people away from norms of community, away from public spaces where people can congregate and share, away from intergenerational wisdom sharing. There's a contempt for expertise, as we see throughout the culture.
Oh, my God.
There's a contempt for older people, right? There's contempt for basically anything that does not affirm you at every moment and tell you that you're great.
Yeah.
You know? And so, it's not that they're bad. It's that the culture is kind of shaping the suboptimal ways that they are engaging with older people. I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Now we get to the portion of questions I ask every guest. The first one. What songs got people on the dance floor when you were going out dancing at your peak? And what songs still get people on the dance floor?
I will say that I'm a huge fan of disco, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My wife and I actually took dance lessons so that we could be good disco dancers.
Okay.
So anything by Tavares,
Yeah.
love some Tavares, love Kool and the Gang.
Yeah.
We're huge disco fans when it comes to dancing. Although I grew up in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
I was a teenager in the 80s. So Bobby Brown, big fan of Whitney Houston. I'm a sucker for the oldies. And it's funny to say that 80s music is oldies music now,
Right.
which is hilarious. But also, I feel like the 90s, also, there's some great stuff in the 90s, but the 90s seemed like the last time people were really dancing. I haven't seen people dancing in a long time.
Yeah.
And so I teach at a high school. Like high school kids are very reluctant to dance now. They will not break into dance like they used to 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I like oldie stuff. Like I said, disco, even Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Yeah.
Bee Gees.
Yeah.
I'm ready to cut a rug. But part of that has to do with the fact that I took lessons. My wife and I learned steps. And so if I'm with her, if something comes on like that at a wedding or something, we're going to go out and do our thing.
Yeah. I should say, so it's hard for people who are younger than us, I would say, to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But disco was not respected at all in mainstream critical spaces.
No way.
Right? So, I mean, I love disco too.
Mm-hmm.
All the rap music that I loved sampled disco. My parents used to listen to all of it. And so, I got to college and I'm reading magazines and I'm hearing people who are basically like rock critic, Rolling Stone-ish types.
Mm-hmm.
They had just total contempt for disco.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt so alienated from that world. Like, this does not reflect me or my community, So, yeah, disco being popular now or cool to like was not a thing when I was a kid.
No. And it was also a reflection of blatant racism, too.
It was.
It was a rejection of Black style and groove and influence.
Yeah.
But I'm old enough too to have seen, when I was younger, I'm old enough to have seen hip hop actually happening in real time.
Yeah.
And seeing breakdancing. And that's when I was like, I can't do that. We all knew like 3 or 4 guys who could do it and did it, and we kind of watched them do it. But that's when I started to kind of back away and started to want to play music a little more.
All right, second question. What is a Black cultural work that you think is an absolute classic but is underappreciated? Any genre, any medium.
Yeah, I thought about this. I love movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge movie buff. And I will say the Cooley High is a top 5 work of art for me.
Yeah.
That movie is incredible. So much with so little. Such great storytelling, such a great slice of culture. It's a time machine. It's everything you want. It's perfect to me.
It is.
And it's so true. There's so many true aspects that he took from his own life and writing it. And it's a classic. It will always be a classic.
Good choice. And then finally, what particular dish did your family make that you looked forward to the most?
Yeah, I will say this, and I thought hard about this. The mac and cheese, man, is another thing. And let me say, the black mac and cheese is like, there's a thing, man. There's a thing about it where, at least in my families, where you got to be able to bounce a ball off of it, where it's high and fluffy and there's a dozen eggs in it. It's special. It's really amazing. And there's been so much bad macaroni and cheese that I feel like people don't understand that meal You have to have the good black macaroni and cheese to understand what mac and cheese is.
Yeah.
There's many, but the mac and cheese is like an essential. I look forward to this, like if I go to a cookout, oh my God, I'm going to get to have mac and cheese.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Excellent. Well, Paul Thompson, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you speaking to me. Where can people find you?
People can find me online at paulthompson.us. That's my website that has my schedule. And you can also find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is PD Bass, PDBASS. This summer, I will be trying to post weekly so I can get back in the algorithm.
Excellent. Take care. Hopefully we can do this again soon.
For sure, I'd love to.
I want to thank my guest, Paul Thompson, for an excellent discussion. You can find him at his website, paulthompson.us. And on social media, his YouTube account, where he hosts all of his incredible bass teaching videos, is PD Bass. So PDBASS. And on Instagram and Twitter, he's PDBass74. My lesson for this episode is about intergenerational wisdom, learning, sharing, and the idea of gatekeeping. So I've said this before, but even though in our current culture, gatekeeping is considered a huge sin, is considered negative, is considered elitist, all of that, I think well-intentioned gatekeeping is actually necessary for culture to thrive and to be passed on. The people who are telling you that all gatekeeping is bad have cynical ulterior motives. They want to replace expertise, wisdom, and culture with profit or attention, which leads to profit. But I get the idea that gatekeeping is anti-democratic and is generally not a good thing. I don't think that's the case when it comes to most culture, especially stuff that needs to be passed down from one generation to another. There's nothing nefarious about apprenticeship. There's nothing nefarious about learning from elders, about, in some instances, humbling yourself, in some instances, waiting your turn. Again, not always, but in general, a healthy respect for elders, for tradition, and for the wisdom that they want to pass down is crucial for a thriving culture and community. Thank you again for listening. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever platform you use to listen. Visit the website blackedtcpod.com. Until next time.